Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really delighted to be here. You know, with my name and my looks, I'm delighted to be anywhere in the world these days. But coming to your town, I'm actually here for the first time, and you have already won my heart. I think this is one of the greatest places where I see people are so friendly, they're compassionate, they're kind. And now I understand why this festival actually gets held here. So I think from that perspective, I am really already won over. The other thing that really amazed me and I'm excited about is that this is the town of Muhammad Ali, the greatest athletes to have ever lived. And there are two important, I think, aspects of Muhammad Ali, and that is his name, which really links two of the greatest personalities of Islam together, and that is Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Ali, who was the second pillar of Islam. So I think from that perspective, that's a second anchor for me to be here, and I'm really delighted, and I'm thankful to the organizing team. I think they are the best that I have seen anywhere. So I think their hospitality, so I think really I'm indebted and grateful, and God bless you all for putting this together. I might run out of time, so what I'm going to do is to actually give you my take-home message. And my take-home message is, this is your future doctor. So when I actually give the first-year lecture to medical students, I remind them that, look, Jesus never went to medical school. He could still heal and cure. It's not the MD degree, it's the passion and compassion. So remember one thing, that if somebody is healed because of you, just remember that it is not you. You are just the witness. You have just witnessed a miracle. Because you give the same medication to two patients, one of them will live, the other dies. It's not even medication. So just remember that it's not the MD degree, it's compassion and your kindness. When I speak to my medical colleagues, I also remind them that the future of healthcare will not be run by doctors. It's actually Google and the IBMs of the future, because they are the one who hold data. Google knows more about me than I know about myself. You heard the story of this young girl in Minnesota. She used to do shopping at Target, and one day her family started to receive all these ads that were related to childbirth and babies. So father was so upset, he calls them back and he said, what are you trying to do? He's trying to encourage my girl to get pregnant? She's just a teenager. Few weeks later, he actually calls to apologize. Because when her shopping habits changed and she was buying the things and products, the actual Google already knew that she was pregnant. So I think many cases, we have to realize that the future of medicine will be at the hands of these big companies. If I tell you that the medication that you're taking has these side effects, where would you go? You quickly check your phone, right? So Google is your future doctor, and I think one of these guys will be treating you. The other thing I leave it for the pharma, is that they must remember that drugs and medication is for patient and people, not for profit. Profit always comes. So profit always comes. So for God's sakes, pay attention. This is one of the reasons that we have now medications for even superbugs and other diseases, is because of this business end and then the profit end of the things. So these are my three take-home messages. But at the same time, in our medical school, we don't give our students a GPA and a grade and a percentage, because their social and emotional intelligence has actually brought them, their IQ has brought them to a certain level. From here onwards, it will be their social and emotional intelligence. So I think information for doctors data is information, but information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom. Wisdom requires consciousness, and we humans are the only species that actually have conscious. So what is happening in the medical field is that now we can take snippets of DNA from a pregnant mother, and we can deduce if the child, which is yet to be born, may have any genetic defects. So the research has actually come to that level where we are able to do the DNA analysis. So what do? We can also actually take these snippets of DNA using CRISPR technology to remove that defective DNA and insert a healthy gene. This is where the field of medicine is actually also moving forward. We are doing now a number of things. Optogenetics, where we can use specific kind of proteins that we express in the brain cells, and by firing single pulses of light, we can only activate those neurons to control either depression, obsessive compulsive behavior, or as well as really pain and other management. These are the technologies. If we are not really embracing them, these are disruptive, but they will disrupt our life if we don't do this. Virtual reality is another aspect that could really be used for treating many of the psychiatric disorders, as well as PSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and they are becoming almost a reality these days. We have, for example, in our lab, we use this virtual reality and augmented reality approach to be able to actually allow these people to go back into the scenario that was responsible for their illness or for their depression. But the outcome of that is really much more better. And we can program, they can even feel whether they are in a different galaxy and in a different world. So I think using these technologies, this is becoming really a possibility to treat many of these disorders, mental disorders, for which we really have no cure. This is really virtual. We are also using immunotherapies, and these immunotherapies are now becoming really the cornerstone for treating cancer and other diseases, and also autoimmune diseases. And this really is at the cutting edge of most of the sciences. 3D printing is allowing us to be able to really even make artificial or 3D reconstructed, precision-driven, personalized organs, for example, bones and joints and knees and cartilages, to be able to really have them implanted so you don't have to rely on donors as much. We're also using at our hospital, this is the intraoperative MRI. So a surgeon normally looks at an MRI and then decides what the surgery is going to be, if it's a brain tumor. But what you can do now is to actually have these patients go inside the magnet, but then using these titanium robots that can go inside the magnet, surgeon sits in a different room or even in a different really hospital, and then can perform surgery with exquisite accuracy and for a long time as well. So let me show you this video as to where the future of all of this, our medicine, is heading. And after that, I will actually take those steps that we are taking to get to this stage. But sit back.
Only takes a moment for the unthinkable to become reality. In the near future, tragedy may come with new choices. Imagine you've been in a car crash that's killed your daughter.
Is she okay? Is she okay?
Or has it?
She's breathing.
You okay?
Is she breathing?
Hey,
Is she okay?
Time of death, 9:17. Your daughter's brain was not impacted by the accident. If you wish to scan her brain for digitization and upload, you have approximately 5 minutes.
Do it.
Now imagine the power you wield when you can order a digital copy of your daughter's brain. And do you know what comes next?
Hi, Dad.
One day delivered to your doorstep is an artificially intelligent android that will act, look, emote, just like your daughter. Every memory from birth on will remain intact, but she'll also be a walking computer with access to all the world's knowledge. This is what your world will look like. This is the future of artificial intelligence. It's the deep future. Your body, gone. You're all computer, all the time.
Let me also introduce you to Erica.
Hello.
Hello there. May I ask your name?
Hi there, my name is Ignacio.
It's nice to meet you, Ignacio. So, what country are you from?
I'm from Canada.
It's pretty cold there, eh?
Meet Erica the android. She or it, depending on who you ask, is one of the most sophisticated humanoids ever designed. And she's giving us a glimpse of what a year-million AI might look like.
Modern computers are adding machine. They add very fast, giving the illusion that they're thinking.
So you can actually consider it as a science fiction, or it is actually one of the realities. But one of the most important questions for my lab is to actually try to understand how does brain function, and if things go wrong, because after stroke, trauma, injury, Parkinson's, the natural replacement of damaged brain tissue doesn't take place. So how do you regain that lost brain function? So the idea is that can we actually design semiconductor chips or devices that can be interfaced with brain cells so they can talk to brain cells and then the brain cells can talk back to it. And I think if that really were to happen, then can a brain be connected to artificial devices to regain some of the lost brain function for which we have really no cure. So, there are tens of billions of brain cells. Each and every brain cell had tens of thousands of connections. And I think one of the most important gift of this fair, or this particular, faith conference, is that by the time you leave, you would have gotten several thousand new connections that actually form the basis for your learning and memory. And when you think about it, is it this brain that we call it a holy grail of neuroscience? Again, the question is how does it work, how to fix it, and whether the biological intelligence be simulated by super intelligent AI, artificial intelligence, and what will happen once we reach the point of singularity. And I think tomorrow I will give some personal examples of how religion and science could come together even in the age when we reach this point of singularity where actually Google becomes the God. But to be able to do this, we really have to acquire the ability to tap into the information processing capabilities of how the brain functions. And as you know, that the brain-machine interfacing, if you are not already on this boat, you have already missed the boat. And what we do is that to understand these brain functions, what we do is that we can take brain cells out from different animal species, rats and mice, and then we have developed these special chambers that allow us to keep these brain cells alive for weeks to months outside. Even the isolated slice, we can keep it alive. And then what happens is that these brain cells, we grow them in semiconductor chip, they become part of the chip, they actually talk and they communicate with each other, they greet, they hug, and they also become really integrated. And we can create these networks of brain cells that can really function the way we want it. So we are in the process of actually designing a flight simulator where a few million rat brain cells will be able to fly an aircraft from Calgary and hopefully land it in Toronto in one piece. So the idea really is that when you look at these brain cells, we can record their activities from days and weeks, and each and every electrode upon which this neuron sits, a brain cell sits, we have the ability to be able to monitor and record their activity and their connectivity. And then what happens is, of course, this is isolated neurons. We wanted to move to a slice preparation where we can take the slice of an isolated brain tissue, and then what we can do is we actually can monitor spontaneously occurring seizures, as you might be able to see the activity as the seizure spreads around different parts of the tissue. So the idea really is that if a surgeon takes out a part of the tissue from a patient who's suffering from epilepsy, we can take that tissue, put it in our chip, and record spontaneously occurring seizures, and then do mid-throughput drug screening to find the best drug combination that blocks seizures in that child. So I think the future of medicine is also precision health or precision medicine, where it will not be the shotgun approach, but it's an individualized medication for individualized people. So of course these neurons that I showed you are in the slice, but brain is 3D. If you want to really create a full brain-machine interface, you need to be able to record from brain cells that are not in contact with the chip. For this, we develop what we call photoconductor simulation. We grow these brain cells on silicon wafers, and on these silicon wafers, the cells are labeled with different fluorescent probes. And what we do is we fire a laser through the microscope. It actually activates the wafer. And then as a result, neurons that are brain cells that are labeled light up. And then single laser will activate these neurons. And honestly, I did not think I long enough to see this. And these brain cells are now firing up, lighting up like a Christmas tree. Now you have the ability to be able to monitor not only those neurons that are interfaced with chip, but also those neurons that actually sit on the top of the tissue and the layer. And once you have the ability to be able to do it, you can put it together, and what you will see is that this monkey, for example, can control an artificial limb. So you take his hand, you stay really close it, and then all of a sudden it's connected because you can plant a chip inside the sensory motor cortex, and when this brain cell will fire, it will activate that chip. The chip is because you designed it, should be able to actually control an artificial limb as if it is part of your own body. So the idea is that you can actually use these approaches and these technologies to be able to allow these patients who suffer or have no limbs to have their limbs be controlled by their own brain. And I think these approaches and technologies that we thought was science fiction is actually becoming a reality. The other thing is that, we use our approach for seizure detection, and this is something that we are now in the phases of clinical testing, is these patients children especially, who suffer from seizures, they don't respond to medication, and then what happens is that they are kept in the hospital with 30-foot cable attached, and then the surgeon plants these electrodes in their scalp, trying to deduce where the seizures are coming from, but it is like an electrical storm. It's really impossible to detect those seizures. Our chip that we have designed and developed is really exquisite because it can detect seizures activity from brain cells 300% better than any other commercially available surface electrode. And what we can do with this to actually make this chip MR compatible, as well as make completely wireless, so you have a little iPhone or some similar device in your pocket, and every time this child seizes, it should be able to really send that 3D image to not only the healthcare providers, but also to surgeons to decide the precise foci where the seizures are coming from, and then they can take out those seizures from these kids' brain. And we can actually detect seizures for many, many months from these animal models as well as in humans. The other aspect is that, brain control devices is that we are actually natural cyborg. So we connect with machines all the time. You're connected to your cell phone is connected to the hub, and then we are globally connected. So what we do in our instance is that this is a little monkey robot that we can actually control by just thinking about this. So everything that one of my undergraduate students will do, monkey actually mimics it, and it does exactly the same thing. And what we can do is we can bring in even the young students into the lab who are really, can turn the lights on or turn the light off in the lab, as well as they could really control these little cube inside a tunnel to move it up and down or backwards and forward. And that really gave us the ideas that we should be able to fly a drone by just thinking about it. So this is a cube that's going up and down, and so your brain gets trained to actually control this wirelessly. And then what you can do is that, because you have a natural transition between different objects that you can actually, your brain begins to own. So in this video, you will see this student has got a plastic hand, and you can do this experiment when you actually go home. Take a rubber hand and then get you a better half. And then what you could do is that to actually hide their own hand from the actual subject. So this is rubber hand, and you stroke it at the same time and then see what happens.
Practice. Here you can see the fake hand, focusing on it. There's the real hand, not focusing on it, simultaneous stroking. And there are various ways you can test it.
So actually, your brain can naturally adapt to these things. And then to doing this, what we can do is that really thinking about it, we can either drive a car, and actually it's better than Google car, or you can fly a drone by just thinking about it. And these drones are also equipped with the sonar and the radio frequency system, whereby it's constantly talking to their headgear which is really a series of electrodes. And then you can actually fly this effectively inside the lab, and hoping that Dean won't show up in the lab or in the vicinity, because one of my students got me in trouble because he was flying this drone in the corridor and he also bumped into the Dean. And so you can see this little sensor is constantly really providing feedback and to telling the operator that I'm going to hit a mountain or an obstacle is coming to swing around. So I think in conclusion, I would really like to say is that we are reaching the point of singularity. This is something to really think about. And I think what will happen, whether we should stop this whole process of brain-machine interfacing. So I think, we do have consciousness, and our consciousness dictates that if we can put a smile on a child's face and somebody can walk because of the technology we developed, and we are smart enough to be able to really curtail it so it doesn't get into the wrong hands. So I really thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Wow. I expect to be up for the next few days thinking about that. I'd like to invite the panel to respond to what we just heard.
Well, I wanted to say that I think I'm glad I started medicine at an earlier age, but maybe I'm not. This might be pretty exciting stuff. This almost sounds like science fiction, but it's coming into reality. So congratulations on your wonderful work. It's very exciting. Thank you. As you were showing these interfaces, I was thinking about one of the themes of this particular conference on loneliness and connectiveness, and how these devices and interfaces might influence that in one way or another. I guess from my perspective, I wonder, whether they will help us in connecting with other human beings, or whether they might be having more of a mechanistic kind of society, and could actually cause difficulties. So I don't know how you see that. I could see the ethicist, the philosopher coming through. So how do you see this as this technology unravels or continues through the next few decades?
So I think it's a great question, but I think before the ethicists and others get to me, usually the U.S. homeland gets to me first.
Yeah.
And they often ask me, what will happen if this technology gets into the wrong hand? And I tell them that, look, you don't need to plant these chips in these, brainless people who are trying to hurt other people. Somehow they are programmed. So actually, I had the opportunity to take a few brain scans from these kids who are raised in such a bad places of, madrasas and other, where they are constantly taught to hate other people. When you look at the size of the brain, and even a child who's not growing up in an enriched environment, their brain size is half the size of a normal child. So I think it really tremendously impacted. When you look at the actual gray matter, it's completely missing from those kids' brain. So I think, the technology, we have the sense and sensibility to think about the ethics that is really involved. But, as a science has certain criteria and certain restrictions, even from animal research to human, we are very disciplined. We actually follow the code of conduct, and we make sure that the technology doesn't get into the wrong hands. But I think now, even for people who have obsessive compulsive behavior, repetitive ADHD, autism spectrum, you can use transcranial magnetic stimulation to be able to really perturb that pathway where this brain communication is constantly running on this high wire. And if you interrupt it, you will be able to reprogram the brain, because brain is extremely plastic. It has the plasticity that allows us to be able to really change, and it changes all the time and constantly changes. So I think a combination of different technologies, even the role of psychiatrists they play, as well as these modern technologies, if we come all together, I think globally we can tackle those challenges more effectively and efficiently.
Wow. I'm pretty stunned. I actually have been sitting in on some philanthropy groups who are discussing AI and genetic manipulation, or I'm not sure what the right term is for it. But and so the question that was asked of me in that process was, do you think that there's some way to connect ancient wisdom with these new technologies? Like, is there some way for ancient wisdom to help guide or have input, or and my question and my answer was, I'll have to think about that. And so here I am. It's chasing me. And I guess all I'll say is you know, my policy, my orientation, which is flexible, somewhat, not too flexible, but a little bit, is that I don't see technology fixing our issues in general. And part of the reason I say that comes from my clan grandfather, who, you know, he stood back and looked at the whole situation, and he says, what this whole world is suffering from right now is a crisis of relationship. A crisis of relationship with ourselves, a crisis of relationship with each other, a crisis of relationship with our beautiful Mother Earth, natural world, and I guess for some of us, we can also say a crisis of relationship with whatever that divinity is. And so I guess for me, sometimes as I look at technology, I just keep seeing us running and running and running away from relationship. And I actually think that has a great deal to do with our mental illness issues at this time. The other thing that's coming up for me is part of the need to, I mean, I understand what you're talking about, the severe, you know, a child with half of brain size, that's heartbreaking. And at the same time, it's also an environmental, social consequence of our systems at the moment, in some ways. So I tend to think that that we're, no matter where we go, we're going to end up having to turn and be with each other, ultimately. So jury's still out, still thinking about all of this, still trying to understand how to connect, and here I am on this panel, so thank you.
I think during one of my interviews, and somebody called in, and it was a really call-in interview, and they said, what will happen to this younger generation that is disconnected with the rest of the world? So what happened to the social and emotional intelligence, which is really prerequisite for your spiritual intelligence? So they are actually moving further away. So I said, you know, ironically and unfortunately, these kids will not be dealing with each other. They will be dealing with machines, right? And these are really what the machine learning does. And as everybody knows, that Facebook had this machine learning algorithm where these machines actually learn from each other. And it turns out that they were starting to create words that their operators could not understand or figure out. So they said CUT cut, BUT butt, so PUT should be put. Why is it put? Change it. So I think every computer language they ended up changing, and then humans couldn't figure out what they were saying. They ended up pulling the plug. But I think the wheels of science will continue. If you take a super intelligent AI and you provide it with really your limbic system, you can design them to have feelings just like the humans do. They will love and hate, and they will do all kinds of other things. But they process information at the rate of 2 gigahertz as opposed to us with 2 megahertz. So the information that I will receive or retrieve in 1,000 years, they can do it in no time. You look at AlphaGo, it actually trained itself to play that game, and it defeated each and every human on the planet. So I think the wheels are turning, but I think at the same time, we need to make sure that these technologies that we are developing, they are used for constructive purposes and constructive use to help us connect back with us and each other, with Mother Earth, and with nature, with our traditions, the culture, with our conscious, as opposed to really deviating from it.
As you deepen the integration between a human brain and a machine, what are the implications for spiritual life, and what are the implications for free will and these things that make us human?
So I think
Tomorrow?
You don't want me to get back to my community in one piece. But I think at the end of the day, this is really an important question, is that if that thing, whatever up there, becomes, or I become it, or it becomes the Almighty. Because, anything that we do right now, we go immediately to Google, Siri. How can I find the best restaurant? And Siri will say, I will book this place for you, and do you want me to make reservations? And somebody ordered a pizza on the phone number that belonged to the elder brother who passed away. And then immediately the voice comes from that side, that this is that person's phone number, and we know that he passed away 2 weeks ago, and his funeral took place at that place. He's buried at that place. Oh, by the way, he had allergies to cheese. Are you sure you want to order cheese topping? So I think, what is happening is our biological intelligence is being compromised by technical or technological intelligence. The onus is on us to reflect back and reconnect to our consciousness and our human values. The scientists can continue to produce these gadgets and these tools, these technological breakthroughs, but at the end of the day, we are the one who actually designed them and operate them.
I think you'll get out of here alive, that answer. That's good. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.